For the Aurora City Council for Monday, October 14, 2024 is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll? I need a gavel.
Mayor Kaufman. Mayor Kaufman.
Here.
Councilmember Bergen. Councilmember Bergen. Here. Councilmember Coombs. Present. Councilmember Gardner. Councilmember Hancock.
Here.
Councilmember Drinsky.
Here.
Councilmember Lawson.
Here.
Councilmember Medina. Councilmember Murillo. Councilmember Sundberg.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Zvonek.
Here.
There's no mayor's update. Are there any issue updates? Seeing none, first question before us is whether or not to move forward with the consent calendar, item number 2A through 2H. Is there any objection to moving the consent calendar forward? Seeing none, the consent calendar will move forward, item number 2A through 2H. What's that?
The 2 I get removed on yours?
It's not on mine. Okay. Oh. What
Did they
is?
get removed? You have 2I on yours? You don't have it on yours. I just want to make sure that we.
Uh-oh. What is 2I?
It is Series 2024 First Lien Water Revenue Bonds Ordinance.
Okay.
It's in e-scribe.
Okay, item number 2A through 2I. Is there any objection to moving the consent calendar forward? Seeing none, the consent calendar will move forward on number 2A through 2I. Items from the policy committees, item number 3A, Series 2024 First Lien Water Revenue Bonds. Teresa Sedmak.
Sorry, that was on consent, so this is more on
Oh,
ballot.
I'm sorry. Oh,
So now we're on 3A. The
3A.
2024 Ballot Initiative Resolution.
okay, well, I'm.
Here's got it.
Okay, ouch. Okay. Item number 3A, 2024 Ballot Initiative, Angela Lawson.
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember
I'm just going to
Lawson.
set this up. So on September 20th, during our Pfizer Policy Committee, Liz Rogers did a great job at giving all the ballot initiatives that are going to be on the ballot that we're going to be getting this week before the election in 3 weeks. So I wanted her to kind of explain the process if a council member would like to do a resolution. And it is before, we have one more council meeting before the election. So I'm going to hand it over to Liz to explain the process. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Lawson. Liz Rogers, Intergov Relations Manager. So as Councilmember Lawson mentioned, in this presentation, which is in the backup, you can find summary information on all of the city, state, and county ballot measures. I will not be going through the entire presentation in the interest of time today, but I did want to give a quick refresher on what council and the mayor need to do in order to take positions on ballot measures. As a reminder, staff does not recommend positions on ballot measures. That is up to the discretion of council. If any member wanted to take a position on a ballot measure, they would need to put forward a resolution, and that resolution would have to be voted on by a majority of council and approved by a majority of council in order for it to be the official city position. So with that said, I also wanted to just include this slide real quick as well, just to show where you can find some election information for yourselves and the public. If there are any questions on this, I'm happy to take them now.
Questions? Liz? Seeing none, thanks, Liz.
Thank you, everyone.
Item number 5A, item number 5A, Employee Occupational Privilege Tax. Councilmember Bergen.
Thank you, Mayor. So this item is actually 5A and 5B kind of go together. And what I'd like is, after I say a few words, that I'd like for our fire chief to just present some findings about why this is coming forward. As I had spoken with the chief after hearing from some residents that were very concerned about why we didn't have a fire station in the Blackstone South Shore area. So basically, I heard from residents. We had an incident that happened in Blackstone where one of the residents was with his child at a playground and then started to suffer a cardiac arrest. And it took our fire department 13 minutes, hopefully I have my facts right, but 13 minutes response time to get to him. Had it not been for a bystander who knew how to do CPR and administered the CPR, we likely would have lost that resident. So that obviously was extremely alarming to me. I also heard from another resident in South Shore about a response time of 17 minutes for a fire. So after hearing from a few residents about why don't we have our fire station, these are residents that have lived in those communities for over 20 years. I believe Blackstone was formed in 2004, South Shore, can't remember what year, but part of when we develop communities, or when developers come into our communities, they have to dedicate land for fire stations and police stations, and also for schools. But obviously, beyond that, we have to make sure that we have the revenues to build the fire stations and then staff the fire stations. So after hearing those two stories from my constituents, and in fact, Councilmember Sundberg has had a similar situation regarding Aurora Highlands in terms of, I think it was a child possibly choking, and he has heard from residents about very, very poor response times. I will let the chief talk about what our expected response time should be, the OSI standards, what we should be trying to achieve, but it obviously is very unacceptable that we do not provide our residents with adequate response time for any kind of health and safety need that they would have in their community. It's not only the residents, but it also affects businesses. So obviously, we have businesses throughout our wards, and the fact that we don't have fire stations in these two areas of Blackstone, South Shore, and Aurora Highlands, it's not only very, it's concerning for residents to not be able to have adequate response, but also for the businesses that are along the corridor as well. And if there was a situation of a business that had a major fire and we couldn't get there in time and they lost their entire business, we would, not only would they lose their business, but you would have employees that would lose their jobs. So it has a greater effect. And it is our number one priority to make sure that public safety is there for our residents. So unfortunately, when we look at our budget and funding, we are anticipating almost a $12 million deficit, loss of revenue in 2026. So I originally voted to repeal the occupational privilege tax. But after speaking with my residents and after speaking with the chief, I just felt that this was the way to be able to fund those fire stations and get those services to our residents faster and to our businesses. So my proposal is basically to repeal of the occupational privilege tax, followed by a resolution that would direct those funds, approximately $6 million a year, to go for the ongoing staffing of those two fire stations, the South Shore Blackstone and also the Aurora Highlands. So with that, if
Well, I'd like to ask a couple questions first.
Well,
I'm going to ask a couple questions first. And that is, we had a full-day budget workshop. Why wasn't this brought up at the budget workshop?
So I thought about bringing it to the budget workshop, but I wanted to have more time to get information together. And I thought it would be actually more prudent to do it at a study session rather than force it quickly through a budget workshop.
We had all day. And let me ask.
No, I did not, sir. I did not have time to get it on the budget workshop when this all came up.
Councilmember Jerinsky was the sponsor of the OPT repeal. When was she notified?
She was notified by Councilmember Gardner.
When? I'm sorry, Councilmember Bergen has the floor. When was she notified?
So, as everyone knows, whenever there's a proposal, a legislative proposal, obviously we as council members try to get support. So I was I was trying to get support from council members. Councilmember Gardner was contacting Councilmember Jurenski before the agenda came out to give her the courtesy of having this come up. And I will say, I felt, I didn't have any reservations from anyone. I did not directly speak with Councilmember Jurenski myself, but Councilmember Gardner did.
Councilmember Jurenski?
Mayor, yeah. Councilmember Gardner called me late in the day on Wednesday, and he said, hey, I want to talk to you about a couple things, really just shooting the breeze, as I would with anybody on this council. And he said to me, hey, I just want to see how would you feel, would you be open to talking about stopping the repeal of the occupational privilege tax and directing it towards public safety? And I said, absolutely not. I said, Councilmember Gardner, you and I have been talking for months now about our lodging tax, the fact that Aurora is only 8% and Denver is 11.75%. You and I have been working on this already for months. I said, no. I said, there has to be, I'm the chair of public safety and I was the sponsor of OPT. For this to be on the agenda tonight, that means Councilmember Bergen and Councilmember Gardner started working on this a week ago, well over a week ago, to make it on this agenda. I was never told. Councilmember Gardner never said to me that a resolution has already been drawn up. We're using Chief Otten as a pawn against you. Nothing was said to me about that. Nothing. I was not told that this would be on the agenda in any way, shape, or form, and I made very clear that I would be against this. So no, I was not told about this.
Okay, Councilmember Bergen, please proceed.
Well, okay, I was told that you were aware that this was
Yeah, well, I wasn't,
happening,
so that's
and
a
that
fact.
you stated you were not in support, which was expected but very disappointing from the perspective. I
Yeah.
know this is something that you're very passionate about, but it also is important, and
Let's
it
have
is
the discussion.
really
Mayor,
important.
we could hear the presentation.
It is. I'm speaking, please.
Councilmember Bergen has the floor.
Thank you. It is, now is the time. I mean, we cannot delay public safety for two major communities that are, mine is totally built out in those two communities. And these people have been waiting for over 20 years to get a fire station. So I'm also passionate about making sure that my residents get the services that they deserve. And I do not want to have a resident die on my watch because we couldn't get fire there in time. And I certainly don't want someone's structure to burn down. The house, God forbid, animals in the house, children in the house to burn down and have loss of life. This is our number one priority. And I'm sorry that I have to look for funding to staff two fire stations. And my only really opportunity was to not raise taxes, but to repeal the repeal of the occupational privilege tax. That is, $2 per employee per month. And it has been in effect since the 80s. So with that, I would like the courtesy, please, of having our fire chief give us some information.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mayor. So my understanding of what I'm here to do tonight is just to talk about how it is we come up with methodology to look at building new fire stations. So obviously life safety is a primary priority, but we're not generally talking about what the mechanism for the revenue generation is. So I will just walk through this a little bit here. What's that? Oh, thank you. So one of the things we look at when we're talking about responses is we target about 6 minutes and 20 seconds. This is not an arbitrary number. It's based in responding to fires which double in size. And we've talked about this a lot as we've talked about our response times, what we've done with the right response process and those kinds of things. So a fire can double in size every minute that it's left unattended to, and a person loses their ability to survive a cardiac arrest. For every minute that goes by, they lose 10% of their survivability profile. So once we get north of about 10 minutes in response time, it starts to change our overall strategy for how we respond. Now, to be clear, there is a strategy to respond to fire calls, and Councilmember Sundberg, you and I discussed this, and Councilmember Berg and you and I discussed this, that there is a strategy in rural departments if you have 15, 16-minute, 20-minute response times that you can address. It just changes what that strategy is. And so in a cardiac arrest patient who does not have access to bystander CPR, their survivability profile is essentially 0. If we go to a fire, we are no longer really focusing on confining a fire to the object or room of origin, but we're focusing on confining it to the building of origin. So we do look at time to flash over, and then we look at time to brain death, the time for brain death to occur. So we prioritize, obviously, why it matters. We like to save lives in the community, and sometimes that requires rapid response times. We also look at, in these particular two cases, where we look at Aurora Highlands and we look at South Shore, we are running away from help, right? Because we're running towards the eastern border of the city. And so the fires will tend to be larger until your help arrives. You're not getting it from both sides like we do within the core of the city. And so there can be increased risk to firefighters if the fire grows beyond the room of origin or experiences flashover. When we look at saving homes, our best opportunity to save that home is if we can confine it to the room of origin because of compartmentalization and rapid response times. And then ISO does consider about 30 points out of the 105.5 points are made up of response times. And so it does help us maintain an ISO 1 rating. We do have some analytic software that just kind of identifies where the response time gaps are. This is a program that we use called Deccan, which is one of the software tools that we're able to use. And it shows you where the gaps are. If you'll notice to the northeast, down in the southeast island, you've got some spots that are red that are north of 6-minute response times. And then right around where the Aurora Highlands development is going, we're starting to experience those as well. The big red block right next to Aurora 8, that's the Air Force Base, and so we don't go in there. So we exclude that from consideration. But this gives you an idea of where our gaps are. Interestingly, these are probably the ones that are in our face right now because we are experiencing responses. There are built out, there are occupants and residents living there. So they are experiencing longer response times. We do have some emerging areas that we'll have to look at in the future, which is really to the northeast where the city's annexed, and you can see those areas, some of which there's no current access to, but we'll need to consider that in the future. And then down in the southwest corner of the southeast island down there are some areas that may become problematic in the future. One of the challenges that we have with opening a new fire station anywhere is about 2 years before we can get that done. And so if you use the example of the South Shore Blackstone Fire Station, if we were to decide today, if the manager and council said, absolutely want a fire station there, it takes about 2 years if you own the land. So it's a year of architecture and engineering, year of construction, and then it takes us about a year to get all those members recruited and through the Recruit Academy. So there's a little bit of lead time into that process. And so my job is to identify their risk as early as possible and communicate that so that we can get that planning underway. The operating costs for a fire station is about $2.715 million. About 2.5 of that is personnel-related costs, and that's payroll and benefits, and then about $200,000 is basically operating for maintenance of the station and the equipment. And then just some information about these areas as they start to build out. Aurora Highlands right now is about 5.2, but we've seen response times in the 90th percentile, somewhere around 19 minutes at the highest level. South Shore is not quite as bad, where the highest ones we're seeing there are around 15 minutes. That one is 85% built out, and Blackstone is, so those are heavily occupied at this point in time. So that's all I've got. That just gives you a little bit of methodology. It's We're interested in saving lives. We're interested in having quick response times. Those response times come to us as recommendations as part of the National Fire Protection Association's consensus standards. That's not just a bunch of fire chiefs sitting in a room deciding how quick we should get there. It's industry professionals from the construction industry, from fire suppression industry, and things like that. So with that, hopefully that clarifies the methodology. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions that you might have.
Questions of the chief, Councilmember
Yeah,
Lawson.
so Chief, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, I'm in Ward 5. I have meetings two meetings a month. Your fire battalion chiefs comes to my meetings, and they always tell my residents, especially at Heather Gardens, they complain about the response times. They think the firefighters are doing a great job, but the response times in Ward 5 hasn't been great. So I'm going to kind of fight for my ward a little bit. It seems like a lot of this stuff is going in Ward 6. So if these buildings go into Ward 6, how can you, 6 and 2. If they go into 6 and 2, how much can you guarantee that Ward 5 residents, and I'm talking about my ward, I'm not talking about Ward 6 and Ward 2, because they get stuff, but I'm talking about my residents. So if we put those two fire stations in there, can I guarantee that I'll have better response times in Ward 5?
So I can never guarantee anything because there's a lot of variables that are
Well,
associated
we have
with that.
16 fire stations currently.
We have
And I
17,
kind of
yes,
wish we
ma'am.
would think about being a little bit more unified in terms of maybe having a police and fire together, because I think
Okay.
that would be fantastic. However, because I guess, I just want the answer of, I know you can't be perfect, but my residents want to know, if we're going to put these out there, then how come, can we assure that my residents?
No, I think it's a great question, and one of the reasons that we pursued the right response was because we were using the limited resources that we had pretty inefficiently. It was interesting because we had a conversation today about how high volume this system really is when it comes to calls for service. And so the system I came from, we had 640 personnel there, and we ran about 49,000 calls a year, which marches out to about 77 calls per year per member. Here, we're 57,000 calls a year and about 489 members. So when you look at just the difference in the volume of the system versus the people that we have to run the calls, it's really important that we're efficient, or you're going to see it impacting response times. Some of the challenge specifically with Heather Gardens is the height of the occupancy, right? So it's a big complex, and it takes a little bit of time to get upstairs. Sometimes that can affect our time to the patient. So, Councilmember Lawson, while I couldn't guarantee you, if you're adding resources to the system, it's not just the concentration of those, but it's how it heals the rest of the system. If one unit is out on a call, the availability of that next unit to come in, and we've seen a 30% increase in their ability to do that. We've seen a 30% reduction in response times because of the right response, the efficient use of the resources we have. The reality is we have limited resources. We've got a large population to serve. We've got 17 fire stations to do it from. And that problem isn't going to get better over time. As the community continues to grow, as we continue to stretch those resources thinner and thinner, it's just going to continue to grow this problem. So I can't guarantee it, but I do believe that if we have more resources to heal the system, it'll be better. And there is, to be clear, there are systems that run with 12 to 20-minute response times. It's typically not in a metropolitan area. It's typically in rural communities. You think of out towards Elizabeth and those kind of areas where you start to see those problems occur, those longer response times occur.
Further questions, Councilmember Berger.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because I think, as the chief said, if we can have more resources where we don't have, the stations that should be there out east, where that will help the overall system. And my understanding, Chief, when we spoke, was that because we have nothing really east of us, and so we have all this growth happening, and I don't have the numbers, Jason, of how many residents live in South Shore. I know Blackstone, Councilmember Zavonik lives there, and I don't know if there's like 2,500 homes or something like that. South Shore has more. Overland Ranch is also going to be developed just east of Blackstone with 1,000 homes coming on board. And we've got Kings Point North, Kings Point South. So we have a lot of growth on the east corridor. And so not to neglect the interior of the city, but on the exterior, we are literally lacking the resources that these residents deserve and expect, and just the travel time as well. Because I think I asked you, can this station go here and help and so forth? So.
Further questions of the chief?
Could he address
sorry.
that?
Please.
Just,
I mean, it's absolutely true. The growth eastward is going to create problems down the road. I think the piece of it that's in our face now and that's concerning enough, because I didn't open these conversations, I didn't reach out to you, I didn't reach out to Councilmember Sundberg to talk about this. Your constituents reached out to you and you reached out to me, and so we share the data that we have. The manager and I talk a lot about the challenge of a rapidly growing city, and then how it is we fund the resources, because every rooftop that goes in has the potential to demand service on the 911, libraries, parks, roads, fire, police. But how do we make sure that we can expand the public safety footprint in a way that adequately protects the residents that are moving in who have a certain expectation of that. We can also communicate to them that if you move into these areas that you have more limited fire protection, access to more limited fire protection, and that is a strategy, and that would be really the direction of the council. But again, I don't know how, and I'm not in my lane to speak to how that revenue is generated. I do see a need in the very near future for those two fire stations to help, not just with that area, but also with healing the system. Yes, I'm sorry.
Mayor Protem.
2 questions. So first, have you done an analysis, like what you just showed on the kind of the heat map, if we were to add one, because like you said, if you add any more resources to the system, it's going to benefit everything. So if you added just the one in the Highlands, let's say, how does that benefit Ward 5, or the one in Ward 6? How does that, just if you guys looked at that, the chance, what if we only had funding to run operation in one?
I understand. We have not run the single numbers. Typically, what we look at is we can tell the surrounding, how it's going to impact the immediately surrounding. The dominoes are hard to track. We use predictive analytics software with Deccan, but it's guessing based on the historical call volume and call type.
Well, I would assume that there's a certain station that's kind of the backup for an area, right? Like out by me, I always joke that the King Supers is a substation for AFR because I see them there all the time. But there's 2 stations relatively close to Blackstone, and this is what I actually talked to Councilmember Bergen about. I don't know about the Highlands. My guess is there's probably not anything really close. Gaylord, yeah, is probably the closest.
That's close.
Station 12, which is over I-70.
Yeah. So anyway, I just was curious. So second part of the question is for, maybe this is Jason or somebody on the budget side. We have the need. Has there been, or is there a point at which the city has said we're going to have these operational and it's built into the budget at any point in time, or not yet?
So right now, the chief and I had discussed, kind of given what he had shown here, and in the 2025 budget, we've discussed essentially getting the Aurora Highland Station built, the physical infrastructure built, and then staffed in 2026. Now that staffing in 2026 is still looking at about an $11 million shortfall. So that $11 million shortfall includes, $2.5 million to staff the station, but that means we still have to balance the budget in that case. We then talked about getting that done, following on with getting essentially the Blackstone South Shore Station built in 2027 and staffed in 2028.
When the AMC is paid off.
Okay.
Further questions? Councilmember Berger.
yeah. The chief and I talked about the different stations that exist and how they can, if everything is running smoothly and there's no fires and there's no traffic accidents and no heart attacks happening, certainly they could probably get to, those residents in Blackstone and South Shore or in Aurora Highlands. But that's not the case, because we are very busy as a department. And when you have multiple calls going on, and one station gets pulled to Inspiration, another one, or another fire department, or not department, but station gets pulled to another area, that's when we have a problem. And so how do you tell residents, well, sorry, we didn't have enough resources or monies to support your particular community because our fire department had to run to, some other jurisdiction, or not jurisdiction, but some other community to be able to also take care of a critical incident. Again, this community has been here for over 20 years. When do they get their fire station? And I understand Aurora Highlands because of the distance from everything. I mean, it's really kind of its own entity right there with not being able to have great response times. But the residents in Blackstone and South Shore also deserve to have adequate public safety, adequate response times, and their children matter, and those people matter, and their homes matter.
I'm not questioning the need, but what I'm questioning is the fact that the OPT repeal sponsor didn't have the opportunity to look for alternatives within the budget besides repealing what is effectively a tax cut.
Mayor,
Councilmember Morgan.
there's been almost 2 years for that money to be identified. So we have not had, in 2 years, we can't identify how to replenish the $6 million. So there's been plenty of time, and we cannot come up with an answer.
I think
time's up.
I think the fact that the OPT sponsor was not given adequate time.
2 years.
Not
2
knowing
years.
this was going to come up. Councilmember Jereski.
I just had one follow-up for
Mayor
Jason, if I
Protem.
may. So if, with no repeal, when would the two stations, what was the plan to have them operational, not built? And then what would it be if the repeal went forward?
So if the plan was, again, staffing the Aurora Highlands Station in 2026, so sometime in 2026, and then Blackstone in 2028. Now, both those are contingent upon balancing the budget, and so we have to continue to, balance that budget.
So
And
with
this,
the repeal, when would they?
and so with the, if the council were to repeal it, what we've talked about is essentially getting both stations underway immediately. You would probably look at the same time for the Aurora Highlands. So the Aurora Highlands would come in. We would remove any question over that. We still have to balance the rest of the budget, but if council were to pass that resolution, that's direction that goes to the top of the list. So that one would still come online in 2026. And then probably the Blackstone station would come on either the last half of 2026 or first part of 2027.
Mayor.
Councilmember Jereski, then Councilmember Morgan.
So with or without the repeal of this, it doesn't change the time frame. And I'm sorry that I sound like this. It doesn't change the time frame of the Aurora Highlands.
I think I'm looking at the chief. I think part of that is mainly, again, the fact that we have to generate the staff, so 17 folks. Our next academy's, this coming summer. So, I mean, realistically, that would be the earliest we could get those folks into the academy to increase overall staffing. So that means that you're looking at first part of 2026.
Does it change the time frame of the Aurora Highlands fire station?
No, it just changes the certainty.
Okay. Well, and when is the AMC paid off?
2031, I think.
2031. I thought it was a little earlier than that.
I've got Greg online and Sherry, I don't remember, but Greg, you remember?
2031.
Okay.
So essentially, repealing this or not repealing this, it doesn't change the time frame of when the Aurora Highlands station is built. That's what you said in 2026 is still about the same time frame.
It is for the Highlands, operationally,
Right.
yeah.
And it sounds like that is an immediate need. Councilmember Sundberg just told me it's 19 minutes from the Gaylord to the Aurora Highlands. I just Googled from Talon's Reach to the Blackstone Country Club, and it has it at 8 minutes. Fire trucks run lights and sirens. They run lights and sirens. So I'm not sure that, Google Maps, that's a correct response time. And what the chief said is he wants to expand the public safety footprint. I think I've been talking about that since the day I got on this council. But we want to sit around and talk about funding greenhouses, funding classes for criminals, funding the gay pride parade, funding all kinds of other stuff except for public safety. When I have been the one who has beaten the drum on public safety. Since I got on this council, the three of us ran on that platform. And we sit around and have all these conversations. We're funding. How much are we giving nonprofits every year? In total, how much are we giving nonprofits every single year? I was not given a chance to look at this. I have talked about things in our budget that are not right. There are people sitting at this table that hold Tabor next to the damn Bible, okay? And what this is a tax that was never voted on by the people, specifically skirts Tabor, specifically.
No, it was before Tabor.
That I understand that. That's my point. That is exactly my point. This was a tax that was never voted on by the people. But there are people at this table that hold Tabor right next to their Bible. Do you think the people would vote for do you think the businesses in Aurora? Do you think the businesses in Aurora? Councilmember Lawson, you joined me one time. We went to talk to a concerned business owner, a restaurant owner in Ward 5. I had to get involved because the city had already delayed his opening 3 weeks. Councilmember Lawson, what was the reason he gave that we were delayed that he was delayed 3 weeks?
It's because of the OPT.
Because the city couldn't figure out how to issue an occupational privilege tax number. This is what the businesses in this city are dealing with. This isn't about whether or not public safety is a priority, because again, I am the one that has beaten this drum since I campaigned. That's not what this is about. So repealing this or not repealing this doesn't change the time frame of the one for the Aurora Highlands. And my other thing, the other thing you said, Chief, you said you opened. Life safety is the primary priority. Well, I agree. And let me tell you something. Dead people in this city, they don't care about half the shit that's in our budget. Okay? I agree. We should protect people. We should keep people alive in this city. You know what else we could do? I don't know, creative thought. We could talk to Falk. We could talk to Falk about repositioning.
It's been done.
If this is, okay, well, maybe we should involve the chief in the conversation.
It's been done.
And maybe I should be involved in the conversation
Councilman Gursky.
as a chair of public safety, who was given absolutely no time to look into this or to come up with what. I'm the chair of public safety. Okay, so Councilmember Drinsky, what are your plans then to fund public? I don't know. This could have been a conversation. This isn't about whether or not a fire station is needed for the Aurora Highlands. Blackstone, I somewhat question the immediate need. I do not question the Aurora Highlands at all. And that's already built into the budget. And I would like to see the analysis that Mayor Pro Tem Zvonek mentioned. I would like to see that analysis. I would like to know if one station is built, what happens to, I have a fire station right across the street from one of my businesses. What this says, repealing the repeal, is you keep this on the backs of businesses and workers. I told Councilmember Hancock, when I got on this council, I brought pay stubs. And I proved that this city doesn't even know how to operate the occupational privilege tax. Because a worker in Aurora is supposed to pay it once. Everybody wants to talk about single moms, right? What about the single moms working 2-3 jobs? I challenged her. I said, go check your pay stubs. Guaranteed you're paying the occupational privilege tax more than once. So if this tax was even properly managed, it wouldn't be $6 million. I can guarantee you right now, this is a bad tax that the voters never got to vote on. It's on the backs of the businesses. It's on the backs of workers. It has penalties. It has interest. Oh, yeah. And another thing, how convenient this tax is, every once in a while, for whatever reason, the city says that, I don't know, occupational privilege tax is paid every month, but for some reason, the payroll company just didn't pay it this month, Councilmember Jurinsky, so you're gonna have to come in, to the cashier's office and pay it. Okay, so I come into the cashier's office, try to use my debit card. Oh, we don't accept that. Oh, well, can I pay you cash? No, we don't accept that either. It has to be a check. Well, who in the hell just walks around with checks nowadays? This tax is inherently a bad tax, period. There are other ways that we can find the funding. You did this behind my back, overnight. You didn't even give me an opportunity. You didn't give any of us an opportunity to have the conversation about where this funding could potentially come from. You know what you did. You know what you did because it doesn't matter. The bottom line is there is a whole lot of options, a whole lot of crap that we fund that I challenge over and over and over. But people on this council sit and continue to vote for the same crap. And again, life safety is the primary priority. And I guarantee you there's a whole bunch of nonsense in our budget that dead people, quite frankly, wouldn't care about. Public safety should be the priority. I agree. We better find different funding. It's at least worth having the conversation.
Councilmember Burton.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I wish in the 2 years because the OPT was originally going to be implemented for January of this year, got pushed to January of 25 because we were concerned about having a deficit in the city and possibly having to make cuts. So there's been plenty of time to identify funds. And I'm sorry, I'm not the chair of public safety. You are. Maybe you should have identified funds for the fire stations that are very important.
I can.
And I'm speaking. And let me just tell you something. I didn't call Councilmember Jurinsky. Councilmember Gardner did. Do you know why I didn't call her? Because whenever we have a discussion and she doesn't get her way, let me tell you what she does. She's a bully, and she has bullied a lot of people on this council over this issue. And she curses me out with cuss words.
Yes.
And is vile. So that's why I did not make the call, because I didn't want to get screamed at.
Okay.
Because it's very abusive and toxic.
Mayor.
So
Okay,
I'm
but I think
sorry
we're gonna
that
have to
I
move
did
on
not
here.
call you personally.
Mayor,
Yeah,
Mayor, this is.
Okay, but we're going to have to move on here real quick. I'm
Well-
going to need to get a sense of the council very quickly.
I object.
Okay, very. Okay, Councilmember Sundberg, and then I'm going to get a sense of the council.
I learned of the deficiency of safety with fire and rescue from a resident that lives in Painted Prairie who's a Denver firefighter. And there was a choking baby, and there was other instances. So this guy is hyper aware of the response times. So I went to Jason and the chief, and we talked about it. And I'm pretty new to government, and one of the things that frustrates me is that this was not adequately forecasted. Why is the money not there, right? Why is it not there with the neighborhood going in there? So,
Yes, well, how does it come out of OPT?
Okay.
so I'm a small business owner, right? I deal with this tax. I deal with payments. Look, this is important to her. I understand that. I pay on a monthly basis $2,400 for a DirecTV bill. I pay $100 a day for energy. I pay $56 a month for OPT. So in comparison, now we're here because of touchstones, okay? All right? We are here because public safety, we're here because of supporting small business, the things that we ran on. Sometimes you have to go back to the touchstones in life that are important to you to direct you. Okay, sorry I'm taking so long there.
Please proceed.
Okay.
Please wrap it up.
I think you should have the floor.
So, you weigh it. I've been visiting businesses that have relocated from Inglewood and getting their asses stolen from in their parking lots, right? We need to support small business, and we need to fund supporting of small business and public safety. And how do you do that? To me, this is simple math. There's a big gap. There's a big gap in 2026. When people are coming to me, it logically makes sense. So where are the alternatives? I'd like to know.
I'll tell you.
Okay.
Mayor, just one last thing.
Okay, Councilmember Jurinsky for a
So
wrap up.
I just want to say, because everybody talks about, oh, it's just $2. Oh, I only pay $56 a month. Well, I sat in a meeting, I don't know, a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years ago. Our defense council partners were leaving this city. We have Buckley Space Force Base in this city. And our defense council partners started leaving this city. Some, in fact, did move to Parker, by the way. So I sat in this meeting. I was called in to figure out, and I had almost no time on this council, talking about being new to government. And I went in, this is to Raytheon. They have 2,000 employees. They pretty much laid into me, and Councilmember Medina was a part of this. They pretty much laid into us about how the police weren't showing up to calls, how they were having to build a wrought iron fence around their property, about how they were having to pay extra every month for private security, and that they were considering leaving Aurora. Do you know what losing Raytheon would do to this city? I said to the head of HR in that meeting, I said, well, ma'am, I said, look, I don't have all the answers, but here's what I know. My first day on council, I'm fighting for public safety, and I'm fighting for the business owners in this city. I said, we did just pass to repeal the occupational privilege tax. I said, it's not immediate, it's 2 years out. I said, but for you, with 2,000 employees, it will be a $4,000 a month reprieve. That was literally one of the things that impressed them in that meeting, to show that we at least care. Businesses are spending so much additional money right now. So much. Mayor, you said it at the Northwest Town Hall that you were just at, that for so many businesses, how they have had to fight crime when the cops aren't coming. They're spending a ton of additional money on private security. So what may be trivial to one business owner in this city is a really big deal to others.
Okay,
Can
all
I
those,
just make a final? It was my,
okay, please.
thank you. I don't know how people are going to, move this forward or not. I do say that this OPT, if we repealed the repeal and we were able to find other funding sources in the next month before it goes in effect January 1, we could then still repeal it. So there's still an option to repeal it. I'm asking for the support to be able to fund the 2 fire stations, and then we can look at repealing it down the road.
All those in favor of the Bergen proposal, please identify yourself by raising your hand.
I thought you said who objected.
For those supportive, raise your hand.
Well, there's people online.
And Councilmember Coombs,
Mayor, I support. Yes,
Okay.
I support.
4 in support. Those opposed?
4.
Okay, 4. So proposal does not move forward. And of course, that doesn't mean you can't bring it to the floor. Am I correct in that?
No, actually, it's her prerogative. She could bring it to the floor.
That's correct.
Even if with not passing through study session, that'd be your prerogative. Would have been for the meeting on the 28th.
Or I could put it on the 28th.
You can put it on, well,
Well, you're running into a
that's a
deadline.
question, Jack. It's on tonight as well, so you can keep it on for tonight, even though it's not getting through study sessions. You can leave it on for tonight. It's your prerogative. It could get removed during the
Well,
motion for the agenda,
we
so.
had 2 council members that are planning to be on the regular meeting that weren't able to be on the study
So
session.
can we move
Your call.
forward? We voted.
Okay,
Those on the.
Okay, it'll be on the regular agenda.
item number 5B. Is it right?
And that's, Mayor, that's the same discussion. I would just take a poll of council to see if it's the same result.
Okay, no, it's the same.
Chase Straight,
Okay.
when we had an engineer.
We're on 5C.
Chase Straight won't do anything.
Okay, item number 5C. City manager to create policy with specific criteria for nonprofit financial support. Mayor Pro Tem Zvonek.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So this is, Councilmember Hancock and I are working on this. I know that over the past several years, a number of us have talked about the concern around the number of nonprofits and whether or not they're actually supportive of the mission and vision of the city and the things that we need to accomplish for our residents. And so what this resolution does is it asks or directs the city manager to create a process to evaluate the 501c3 organizations, nonprofits, to ensure that those who are asking for general operating support, that they have to be contributing to life and safety concerns that are aligned with things that the city needs or needs to accomplish for the residents. It does create the opportunity for nonprofits who are doing the one-off event, 501c3s, to bring that request to council, but it has to be approved by council, and again, have a connection back to it. But those are one-off opportunities as opposed to the ongoing operational support that we would provide.
Questions of the sponsor?
Mayor,
Councilmember Dronsky.
just one comment. This item right here might free up a lot of funding in the city when we start combing through the nonprofits, just my 2 cents.
Very well. Is there objection to the Mayor Pro Tem's proposal? Seeing none, then that will move forward. Crisis program update. Councilmember Sundberg, this is yours.
Yeah, Mayor, we all know what CRT is, and I just wanted for them, and we support it wholeheartedly, but I wanted them to please just tell some real-life stories of how this program is benefiting our city, if they would.
Thank you. Go ahead, Dustin.
Good afternoon. I'm just going to introduce these fine colleagues that we have the pleasure of working with. I'm the acting supervisor for the crisis response team as of right now. Closely work with these invaluable people as an asset to our team, city, our families that we serve, and the clients that we serve. Callie Tucker is a crisis intervention program administrator. She has a master's in clinical psychology and 10 years experience in crisis intervention and program development. She's the program administrator that supports crisis response team, the targeted violence prevention program, the Aurora mobile response team program policies, performance, and growth. Callie will be going over through some of the summaries of our programs. We have Jennifer's a licensed clinical social worker with her master's in social work from Arizona State. She's the clinical supervisor for our crisis response team, targeted violence prevention program, and the Aurora mobile response team. She's worked as a first responder crisis clinician for the last 8 years with Parker PD, Denver PD, and now the Aurora PD. She has extensive experience in the community mental health, and has worked in the crisis systems for over 20 years with various clinical settings. She's very passionate about the role that the clinical co-responder with the policing systems and improving the outcomes of those in crisis that we respond to in 911 calls. Jennifer will be sharing some of the team success stories. So,
Thank you. Thank you guys for the opportunity to speak to you guys and celebrate our teams today. We know that we're going to keep this pretty brief in terms of slides and really just get to the good stuff, hearing about all the ways that we celebrate our team. So all should be aware that we have 2 co-responder teams and a targeted violence prevention program that operate to provide a spectrum of care through the 911 system. And the responses vary from low acuity to high acuity behavioral health calls and high acuity threats of targeted mass violence. Co-response, what it means for co-response is to pair a first responder with a clinician. And so of our 2 teams that are the co-responder teams, we have Aurora Mobile Response Team, or AMRT, that pairs a EMT or paramedic from Falk and a clinician from UC Health. And our CRT team pairs a clinician from UC Health and an Aurora PD officer who's been trained in CIT and mental health intervention. And so the key differences between those 2 programs is that CRT is able to respond to those higher acuity calls with a behavioral health component that may have an active threat of violence or guns mentioned in the weapons mentioned in the initial call for service. And they can also provide that law enforcement aspect of response should the need arise. We also have 2 case managers for our AMRT and our CRT program that are able to conduct those follow-ups for ongoing care connection and case coordination. And our most common call types that our 2 teams respond to are suicidal persons, welfare checks, homelessness, and substance misuse. We also have our targeted violence prevention, which is a specialized subunit within the crisis response team that also pairs a clinician from UC Health with an Aurora police officer. And they, as well as a team case manager, they are able to, they're able to respond to referrals pertaining to threats of targeted mass violence and conduct threat assessments, create threat management plans, and provide ongoing case management. We are just so here to celebrate our teams and the way that we all work together. Not everybody is meant to do crisis work, and the fact that we have this incredible subset of specialized clinicians, EMTs, paramedics, and the Aurora police officers, which are most of our operations are out of District 2, is just an amazing partnership to get to witness. Without that partnership, we would not be an effective program. We also are able to, we'll be standing up our third AMRT unit this month, and looking forward to additional growth. So I hope that was not too rapid, but I really wanted to, like I said, get to the good stuff. And it's Jennifer over here, and she's going to give you all the literally highlighted highlights.
As the clinical supervisor of CRT, AMRT, and TVP, I could not be more proud of these teams, these officers, the clinicians, the EMTs, even our data analysts, and our care coordinators. They work tirelessly every single day to make sure that the community members have the resources that they need. Our officers and clinicians show up on scene to provide that hope and understanding in the crisis that they're in so that they can reach the mental health goals that they have for themselves. This clinical staff from UC Health has provided thousands of hours of on-scene suicide risk assessments, brief therapy, access to resources, and numerous other tasks, including dozens of food boxes from the local Salvation Army, as well as many rides to the local walk-in crisis center. The officers watch over the clinicians as big brothers and keep everybody safe on scene. Our EMTs are incredible, providing medical care on scene with our clinicians as well. So to highlight a few positive stories that we've had, I had the clinicians, EMTs, and officers send me in some, so I'm just gonna kind of read them to you because they're very thorough. CRT clinicians responded to a call of an intoxicated suicidal woman who had attempted to overdose on medication and left her residence in her car. After she left the residence, she was called in as driving dangerously and erratically in traffic due to her level of intoxication. The clinician was able to get a hold of the individual over the phone, and the individual was very irate and didn't want to stop the car or talk to anyone. The clinician persuaded the individual to safely pull over and inform the clinician where she was at. The location was unknown at the time. After speaking with the clinician, the individual was able to be transported to the hospital after giving her location for further evaluation. With the clinician in the ambulance at the individual's request, the clinician rode along with. Due to the intervention of CRT, the individual was transported safely for further evaluation, and no further harm or injury came to the individual or the community members. The individual was diverted to the proper care she needed instead of being charged and taken to jail. Another story was an adult male that had schizophrenia and was self-medicating with street substances. Because he had gotten himself into legal trouble in another city, he moved to Aurora with his family with the hopes of obtaining more resources for him. And CRT, AMRT, and Patrol were getting inundated with calls for services to this family. Our case manager worked on that case for months and eventually was able to get the family in touch with many resources, not only for him, but for the entire family. And they stated that they were falling apart. As the case manager also was able to collaborate with the care team he had in the previous city that they were residing in order to continue the same medications. Thanks to the collaboration and family support, we all have not had any more calls for service to that location. Another case manager reported that a patient had a son with behavioral health problems and autism. And when they were spoken with, the mother cried for about an hour, sharing her frustrations and roadblocks she had encountered, and that she was not being heard at her son's school or other places. Her son was slightly above typical age for ABA therapy in children, which made it difficult for him to be placed in a facility. The case manager spent days searching and reaching out for facilities that would take him in, and also collaborated with the patient's school and updated them on our end. And eventually the school understood the gravity of the situation and provided the resources they had on their end. She was able to obtain placement for him at an appropriate facility. The mom thanked the case manager and told them how it was the first time she'd ever felt any relief or heard in years. Another case manager contacted the teen
contacted the mom of a teen who had a lot of behavioral problems, suicidal ideations, traumas, and was constantly attempting suicide. The mom had shared her frustrations on how difficult it had been to get her into and out of an IOP and into partial hospitalization due to the lengthy wait list and the lack of resources for adolescents in the Aurora area. Thanks to the partnership, this case manager had made with the facility ongoing. She was able to get the patient in the next day into their IOP and received updates as mom was allowed, and the patient successfully completed the program, and the family was also attending the alumni program after that. CRT and AMRT has not had any further calls from that family as well. Huh? Are we out of time? Oh, sorry. Okay, I have a lot more, but I can save them for another day. But our programs.
Are there any questions? I just want to say that I did a couple of ride-alongs, but it's been a while with CRT teams, and that the really weak link was the case management at that time, that there was no, they would intervene in a specific case, and then there was no follow-up, no handoff. And so obviously, what you're saying is you've been able to bridge that, or could you elaborate on that?
Yep, as soon as our clinicians on scene and officers deal with a community member that does need more resources than they have at the time, we have a Teams form that automatically shoots a referral over to our case management team, and they're able to get in touch with those community members within 24 to 48 hours and start the process of assessing what further needs they have.
Any questions?
Mayor.
Councilmember Drensky, then Councilmember Summer.
I mean, you know, we hear from you guys and the public safety meetings. And so we see, you know, the data, how many calls you guys respond to, how many resort to people going to the hospital or to jail, or whatever the outcome is. And just in my opinion, this is by far one of the most impactful programs. I've said it in almost every public safety meeting when you guys present. This is one of the most impactful programs we have in this city, and it also helps our police officers, you know, not have police involvement in issues that they really shouldn't.
Right.
So just want to say it again.
We couldn't do it without our police partners. Obviously, with the partnership with APD is essential to this whole thing working out.
Sure.
And they're amazing. The officers are incredible, all of them, but especially the ones on CRT that are willing to take on going to mental health calls day in and day out and deal with people who are on the brink of wanting to end their lives and be able to meet them where they're at and help them get the resources they need. Absolutely.
Okay. So, Councilmember Summer.
Oh, thank you for those stories and for being here and all that you do. I've heard literal life-saving stories about your work from young to old, so really appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. Our team is
Aurora Mental
amazing.
Health had the contract before, and they had some staffing issues, and then that's one reason why they switched over to UC Health. So are there vacancies right now in terms of staffing with UC Health?
We have 2 clinical openings right now that we're filling. We have 3 interviews set up this week for those 2 clinical
No,
openings.
not we, is it UC Health is responsible for that, right?
Correct. I'm sorry, I'm with UC Health. So
Okay,
yes,
okay.
yes, UC Health, we have those interviews set up this week for the 2 clinical openings we have.
Okay. Further questions? If not, thank you so much for your presentation, really appreciate it.
Thank you all so much.
Meeting is adjourned. We will reconvene at 6:30 on the floor.